Thank
you, Mr. Chairman. Chiefs, welcome. Thank you for being here. I understand that DHS has emphasized processing efficiencies and partnerships with community groups and outside organizations over the last couple of years as the flow of illegal immigration reached historic proportions. But cutting through the haze of technical terminology, processing efficiencies really just boil down to processing illegal aliens faster for release from custody where they are free to travel into the interior of the United States. Chief Chavez, would you agree that a significant portion of the illegal aliens encountered by Border Patrol agents in your sector over the last few months have ultimately been released from DHS custody?
In the RGV sector, actually, we've been able to process individuals and remove them. I think that we've been able to remove them to other countries. See, RGV sector primarily encounters migrants from Central America, and these are from countries like El Salvador, Guatemala, Honduras. We're getting many from Nicaragua right now as well, and Mexico.
So what % are released into the interior?
We haven't actually been releasing anyone here in a while. For us, they've been expelled to the countries via flights, via removal flights.
So none of them requesting asylum because they have a credible fear of threat in their country?
There have been some. There are numbers of people that have requested asylum between the ports of entry, and they've been set up for their CIS interview. A little bit quite different situation than when I was the chief of El Paso. Those numbers were a little bit different, right? In El Paso, there was a lot of coordination with local NGOs and local faith-based organizations to work some sort of a release with ICRO for the community releases. Very types of different demographics, different types of populations that we dealt with at the time back in El Paso.
Okay, of the individuals that are being released into the country, what's the average processing time?
The average processing time?
Yes.
Well, for those, it was within hours. It wasn't days. It was a coordinated, I want to say, well, they would be an estimated nowadays. I wouldn't have an accurate number.
How do you differentiate between the individuals that are alleging credible threat and requesting asylum versus ones that you're putting on planes and flying back?
It is, sir. It's a very different type of process. So as where one could take, I want to say 8 hours to process, another one could take a day or two to process, depending on the type of pathway that they're going to be taking.
Okay. Again, based just on the last few months, what % of illegal border crossers would you say are released from custody in your sector to travel onward to their ultimate destination in the U.S.? What %?
I don't have a % for you, sir, on the number.
10, 20, 50, I mean, ballpark.
I would be guessing, sir.
Okay. Well, so the individuals that are released, ultimately, they're free to go anywhere they want to in the United States. Is that correct?
When we work with ICRO and we do the process complete and turn them over to ICRO and they work the release, after that we have no contact with that migrant, so they are pretty much released into the interior of the United States, and they determine where they want to go in the United States.
So I was in McAllen a few years ago, and I was leaving at the airport, and there were people with manila envelopes getting on flights. They had just been processed, and the manila envelope is what is their ultimate court date. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And how do they get on a plane if they don't have ID? How do they go through security?
That would be a question for ICRO, sir, because they make all those arrangements with the airlines.
Okay, but I mean, these individuals very likely do not have ID, but they're allowed to use their paperwork, their court date as their ID to get through security in McAllen. That's my understanding.
They have certain documents with them, and they use those documents to get their travel documents.
So whereas I have a federal, I either have a driver's license or a military ID, that gets me through security, but these individuals who have just come into the country illegally requesting asylum are allowed to not show ID to get on planes. Is that right?
I'm not aware of what they would use, sir.
Okay, so Heritage Foundation's oversight project did a study of illegal aliens that were released from DHS custody. And just in January of 2022, they traced the individuals that were released to 431 separate congressional districts. All but 4 congressional districts are receiving individuals that have been processed from the southern border and are here illegally waiting their hearing. I just find that to be pretty shocking. But again, I'm out of time. Thank you so much for being here. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Chair recognizes Mr. Gonzalez for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman Comer, for hosting me today. I represent 42% of the southern border, places like Uvalde, Eagle Pass, Del Rio, El Paso County that are in the news every single day. As a representative of the largest border district in the country, I share the frustrations with my colleagues, and it's long time for Congress and the administration to stop playing political games and do something. I want to first start by thanking you. Thank you, both chiefs, for everything that you do. Thank you for the men and women in green that every day roll up their sleeves and go to work. My first question is to Chief Chavez. Yes or no, please. Do you think repatriation flights work?
Yes, sir, they do for us.
Damn right they do. A repatriation flight is someone that does not qualify for asylum, gets put on a plane, and they don't get flown to New York or Chicago or Washington, D.C. They get flown to Haiti, to El Salvador, or Guatemala. They absolutely work. When there were 15,000 Haitians under a bridge in Del Rio, what stopped that was literally around 2,000. It wasn't the whole 15,000. Bulk of people were released into the country, but it was about 2,000 people that were flown back to Haiti, and all of a sudden it stopped. My next question, also for Chief Chavez. I have a bill, the Security First Act, that labels cartels as terrorist organizations. Would you agree that cartels terrorize the people they smuggle and deserve to be prosecuted with higher penalties?
I do agree that they do terrorize the migrants that they smuggle, just from statements and debriefs that we receive when we interview migrants in our custody.
Of course, these are evil people that don't even view these migrants as cattle. They're really mistreated in every single way. Next question, also for Chief Chavez. Does the Border Patrol currently have the capacity to permanently house all migrants for the entire length of their asylum process?
Absolutely not, Congressman. We do not have that level of capacity in our facilities.
It currently takes around 5 years for an asylum case to be heard, sometimes longer, depending on what part of the country that you take. This is the danger of turning an agency like yours that is meant to catch terrorists, fentanyl, real-time situations, and putting you into processing centers. My next question is for Chief Modlin. Would banning all asylum claims, including people in legitimate life or death situations, make the border more or less secure?
Thank you for the question, sir. I don't know that banning any asylum claims would make the border any more secure.
Yeah, I think to your sector in particular, where the bulk of the people coming over are gotaways, are essentially trying to flee and escape. That's what I worry with the rhetoric. If you divide the two, you won't solve the root of the problem, which is essentially catching bad people from into our country. I want to go back to Chief Chavez. Would manpower and technology, would that help start to secure the border?
Yes, sir, absolutely. Manpower and technology makes a huge difference in order for us to secure that border.
Can you give me some examples of where manpower and technology have been successful?
If we go back 27-year career, back in the mid-'90s, we had a 5-mile piece of border in San Diego from the beach just to Interstate 5. 5 miles of border, we were encountering over 500,000 people. And in those 5 miles, we increased the amount of personnel, and we tripled the amount of technology. And within a couple of years, we were able to gain operational control of those 5 miles of border. So it was effective. It was really effective, but it also added barrier. So with infrastructure, we were able to gain a significant amount of enforcement there.
You know, a little over a year ago, last Christmas, I visited Del Rio. I spent 20 years in the military. I've spent a lot of Christmases abroad. I wanted to spend this Christmas on the border. So I visited the Del Rio sector. Del Rio, it's 7 o'clock in the morning, and there was over 100 migrants waiting to be processed. And I'll never forget that day. There was one Border Patrol agent that was exhausted. You could see it in the man's eyes. It was 7 a.m., his shift had just started, and he was already tired. So you can tell that the workforce is under an incredible amount of pressure. In the same lens, I see a young woman in her mid-20s with a 4 or 5-year-old little boy, and that little boy is gripping her hand as tight as can be. And all I can think of is what kind of journey had they gotten to get to that point. And so, speaking with her a little later, her husband was killed in the country that they were fleeing. What I'm getting at is there are moments where there are people legitimately fleeing persecution all across the world, and we got to be respectful of that. We also have to stop the terrorism and the fentanyl from coming into our country and killing our children. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. That concludes the questions. Now we're going to move to closing statements. At this time, I yield to Ranking Member Raskins.
Thank you kindly, Mr. Chairman. Before I close, may I seek unanimous consent to submit several letters from immigrant stakeholder groups and 2 articles?
Without objection, so ordered.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's been a long day, but very productive day, and I want to start by thanking Chief Modlin and Chief Chavez for your really exceptional testimony today. I wanted to close with just a few points, Mr. Chairman. One is a point about the language that we use and the logic of our arguments, because over the course of the day, I've followed as people have made arguments about noticing an increase in the number of arrests and apprehensions. And sometimes it's said, well, there have been a lot more arrests and apprehensions under the Biden administration, therefore the situation's getting worse. Of course, our side says there's more arrests and apprehensions under the Biden administration, so things are getting better because the officers have been given more funding and support and they're able to do enforcement better. But in any event, whatever we think about it, we should be consistent with it. If we think that the number of apprehensions and arrests going down means that that's good news because the problem is less, it should be good news under both Trump and Biden. If we think it's good news that the number of arrests and apprehensions is going up, it should be good news under both. This should not be a rhetorical exercise, but all of that to me underscores the importance of our actually working together to try to solve these problems. And I think what we've learned from our witnesses today is that we need to be listening to the people on the ground. We need to be avoiding the ideological polemics as much as possible and responding to what people on the ground actually say is needed in order to improve the situation. With respect to that, in the omnibus last year, there was $72 billion for Border Patrol operations. And I just want to say Washington is known as a place where there is a lot of rhetoric, there's a lot of oratory, there's a lot of fancy language, but then there's also votes. And votes really is the lowest common denominator where the rubber hits the road. And I was proud to have supported the $7.2 billion for Border Patrol operations, for hiring and for southern border reinforcements, $65 million for 300 new Border Patrol agents, $60 million for new CBP personnel at ports of entry, where 90% of the fentanyl is coming in, and so on. So I think that speaks volumes about our seriousness about being willing to work together and to put the needs of the country and the possibility of consensus about immigration above pure politics. And the final point I wanted to make, Mr. Chairman, is about a point that several members, including yourself, made taking umbrage at the invocation of the great replacement theory, the central dogma of extreme white nationalism in America today. And I'm not sure if the members took umbrage at the suggestion that the great replacement theory is the central dogma of extreme white nationalism, or they took umbrage at the fact that they were being associated with it. And I would love to get to the bottom of that. But just to be clear, I can cite to you chapter and verse from numerous mass murderers who attacked racial minorities and cited the Great Replacement Theory as their justification for doing it, starting with Peyton Gendron, who assassinated 10 people at the Top supermarket in Buffalo and repeatedly cited the Great Replacement Theory as his motive for engaging in the shooting. We can also look to Robert Bowers, who was the mass murderer who killed 11 Jewish worshipers at the Tree of Life Synagogue in Cleveland, who also posted online before his crime that he was objecting to a Jewish nonprofit, which he said likes to bring invaders in that kill our people, and then echoed numerous claims of the Great Replacement Theory. The Walmart mass murderer who assassinated 23 people in El Paso said, "I am simply defending my country from cultural and ethnic replacement," and so on. So I think it's beyond question that this has become an article of white extremism and violent white national extremism in the country. Now, you can hear about this in more mainstream contexts like Fox News, and you do hear very distinct echoes of the Great Replacement Theory being uttered by politicians. But if what our side heard today was that people don't want to be associated with the Great Replacement Theory, then we say hallelujah to that. And all we need is a word renouncing or denouncing the Great Replacement Theory, and you will never hear from us again any implication that people on that side support it. But all we have to go on otherwise are prior statements that people have made. But I would love nothing more than to have every member of this committee together. You and I could issue a statement together on behalf of the entire committee denouncing the Great Replacement Theory, which has proven to be such a danger to our people and such a poisonous intoxicant for people who are going out and acting on it in lethal ways. With that, I just want to thank you, Mr. Chairman, for putting together a good hearing here, and again, thank the witnesses for their participation. I yield back to you.
The ranking member yields back. I don't even know how to comment on a lot of that. I mean, I assume you stand by the tweet. We just thought it was some lowly staffer that tweeted something out and made a mistake, but I assume you stand by the statement on your official statement that today's hearing was to amplify white nationalist conspiracy theories?
Actually, it's not what it says, Mr. Chairman. I'm happy to read it.
I just read it off the tweet.
It says, "Good morning to everyone except oversight members who are using today's hearing to amplify white nationalist conspiracy theories instead of a comprehensive solution." So it specifically excludes everybody who doesn't participate in that. There are members on this committee who have indulged in that kind of rhetoric. But if they are willing to say now that they renounce the Great Replacement Theory, they don't want to be associated with it, then I'm very happy to say we will withdraw that tweet and you will never see a tweet like that again.
It appears to me that the two sides couldn't be any different on border security. We believe border security is national security. It's my analysis of my friends on the other side's defense of an open border is that anyone who would suggest we need to secure our border is a racist or a white supremacist.
No one has said that, and I disavow and renounce and denounce that sentiment. There are legitimate differences that people have about this, but my only point about it, Mr. Chairman, and with your indulgence, is that people are getting killed because of the Great Replacement Theory. And I gave you several examples of that. There are people loaded up on hate who go in who actually believe that there's a deliberate effort to replace the native population of the United States and that there's an effort to bring people in to replace them. That's what people were chanting in Charlottesville, "Jews will not replace us." That's what its meaning is. And so it would be great if people would just say, we don't believe that, and we would like to turn down the temperature on this and work together for meaningful solutions.
We believe that people are getting killed because of the fentanyl that's coming across the border every day. We believe that crime rates are increasing. We believe that human trafficking is increasing because of the lack of security on the southern border. This hearing was a fact-finding mission to hear from Chief Patrol agents on the front lines of Biden's border crisis. This wasn't another, I forget what the White House said it was this morning, trying to politicize. This was, I think, a substantive committee hearing, gathering facts from people on the front lines. I don't know why Secretary Mayorkas was so hesitant to allow people to come forward. Committees of jurisdiction in the House of Representatives are going to continue to invite people on the front line to the Border Patrol to come and testify, because we want to support you all. We appreciate your service to our country. Those of us on the Republican side, we've made many trips to the border. There's no telling how many meetings the members that represent the border states have had with Border Patrol agents, and they're begging us for help. They're begging us to change the policy, to force this administration to change the policy to make their jobs easier and their life safer. We heard testimony from two great law enforcement professionals today that the cartels are taking advantage of the crisis at the southern border, leveraging chaos by overwhelming Border Patrol agents with large groups and task saturation tactics. So that's what I saw when I went to the border. We knew they were utilizing drones. They were sending large groups in. The Border Patrol would apprehend them and take them to process, and knowing that no one was left in that area, they would send drug runners across the border with the fentanyl. Happens every day. We heard testimony that the number of encounters of illegal border crossers went from unprecedented to a situation so bad that the situation is now indescribable. We learned that many migrants decided to illegally enter the United States because they believed that President Biden would let them in. They believed that the law had changed. We've heard testimony that President Trump's Remain in Mexico policy was effective in El Paso. We heard testimony that Border Patrol has had to divert resources to respond to cartel tactics, crossing large groups or putting migrants in peril, leaving other parts of our border unguarded, what I just mentioned earlier. And we learned that the Tucson sector, 52% of 700 pounds of fentanyl seized in the field was backpacked across the border by smugglers in between ports of entry. These are just a few of the facts that we learned today. And I want to thank the witnesses again for appearing. We appreciate your service. We want to work with you if there's ever anything that we can do to make your jobs easier, make your lives safer, and secure our southern border, to help secure our southern border. We want to do that. This is a priority for the majority in this House of Representatives, and I appreciate the substantive testimony today and look forward to working with you in the future. With that, I now declare this committee hearing adjourned.